What do you do when overnight a global pandemic plunges the organization you lead into uncertainty? Welcome to The Pivot. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of The Pivot. I'm Jen DeVore, Civic Impact Manager at the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. The Pivot is our new web series highlighting regional leaders talking about how they're pivoting in wake of COVID-19. Very excited to introduce my next guest, Tracy Brala, Vice President of Ecosystem Development at the University City Science Center and Executive Director of Venture Cafe Philadelphia. We're going to talk to her today about how they're pivoting in these strange times. So Tracy, if you want to turn your camera on and join us.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, Tracy. How are you doing with all of this? How's everything going just from a personal standpoint?
I think we're hanging in there. Someone had described that to me the other day, and I thought that was just an absolute accurate description. Every day is more of the same and also different at the same time. So all good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, no, it is. I feel like, it's how you answer that. Like it makes you pause a little bit and think about the greater context of things. So I agree. I like that as a go-to. So let's talk about the Science Center and Venture Cafe. Why don't you just explain a little bit about what the Science Center is and then how Venture Cafe is connected to the organization?
Great. So the Science Center is a 57-year-old nonprofit that has been in the space of convening, commercializing promising technologies, and cultivating talent for a number of years. Like I said, 57 years. And about 2 years ago, the decision was made to bring Venture Cafe Philadelphia to Venture Cafe to Philadelphia. And so to create what was a global organization and bring it to Philadelphia to really continue the great convening work that the Science Center has been doing for all of this time. And so what Venture Cafe is in normal times when we're not working remotely, Venture Cafe is a Thursday gathering where each week we bring together innovators and connectors and doers and dreamers to learn from each other and get inspired. And ultimately, we do it every Thursday from 3 to 8 p.m. And from each week, we usually have about 300 people that come throughout the course of the evening. So it really is an opportunity for Philadelphians to come together, as well as for people from around the world.
That's great. Yeah, and I've been before. I think it's a fantastic lineup of programming. And with Philadelphia being such a city of relationships, which we've talked about on the show before, and being such a social city, having events and programming like Venture Cafe is so important to bring everybody together. So talk to me about how this global health crisis has affected this work.
Yeah, so if you think about it, the premise of what we just talked about is bringing people together. And so how all of a sudden in this environment where we can't gather in public, how do we think about making changes? So for us, this actually started before many people really even recognized what was potentially happening, here in Philadelphia. And it happened because of being part of this global organization. Our peers in Tokyo actually pivoted to the virtual environment 2 weeks before we did. And so I was in close contact with them and discussing the implications, and really thought that I had about a week before I actually made the decision to do the pivot. And then what I deduced was on March 4th, so we do this on Thursdays, so for March 5th, what I really found was that the evidence that was mounting, that we really, in order to keep everyone safe, that it really didn't make a lot of sense to bring together large groups of people because you just exacerbated the odds of spreading the illness to folks. And, I've always prided ourselves on the community that we've built. We've had over 10,000 people that have come to our Thursday gatherings in the first year. And I feel like they're all part of my extended family. And I just felt like making the decision to go virtual, despite the fact that no one else in Philadelphia who was hosting any type of networking event had made that decision. Or, in fact, we were actually the first venture cafe in the United States to go virtual, but recognize that, if it wasn't going to be on March 5th, then it was going to be a week later that we had to make that decision. And how could we just kind of move things forward and do what we always do best, which is experiment boldly and go virtual.
Yeah. And so, that is such a heavy decision to make, because it's more than just deciding that you're going to move this event virtually, but you're also, realizing that something major is about to happen, and nobody wants to jump in too quickly or raise the alarms. But at the same time, to your point, you have to be protective of your stakeholders and your community. Mm-hmm. And so what was that like, talking with your team as you started to contemplate making that decision as early as you did?
So we had been talking about it for a number of days. And like I said, I really thought we would go the following week, that we would make the decision to do Venture Cafe virtually on the 12th. So no one was surprised about that. They were surprised when I kind of came out of my office after being on a global call and was like, we're going to go this week. And what are the steps that we absolutely need to do to make this happen? And so my team is amazing. The team at the Science Center is amazing in that we really all banded together. The entire ecosystem development team really worked together collectively to kind of troubleshoot and say, okay, how do we need to do this? How do we technologically need to make this happen? How do we need to leverage our marketing peers to make sure that it was going out there? And then also, we have a really open environment, and it's a culture that we've created already in advance. And so what I think was good about that was that people were able to give me feedback as kind of the person who was making the decision, and recognize that I was going to value what their opinion was and listen. And, our program manager and experienced designer, an example of that, said to me, so when we announce this publicly, you need to do a video. And I'd never done a video of, kind of me communicating. I write a newsletter every week, and, I've gotten that kind of, down in my voice, but it was kind of one of those where I was taken aback, but also really recognized and listened to what she was saying. And what she was saying is, people need to see this and hear this from you and hear from your voice why we're making this decision. And so, I think what was important about it was really making sure that we were listening to, kind of everyone involved and everyone on the team to ultimately be able to go from, the last event that we held at the end of February, where we had over 400 people, to then shifting in less than 24 hours to a virtual event. And, we were less than half of that week of the 400 people that we had, but still, I knew it was the right decision as a leader to ultimately do that.
Yeah, and now as we look back, we know that it was certainly the right decision, given how quickly this spreads and how, we're reading now different reports of how early it's actually been in the US, talking about the coronavirus, of course. And no, I think that's great that you guys were able to make that decision, which was a hard one. So tell us, how did it go? How's it been since? And what was the first virtual event like?
It was, we were all learning the technology together. And so I think that is also something that's really inspiring from a team standpoint, because I wasn't the one who had all the answers. It was collectively all of us working together. And it's been amazing to make the pivot. It's provided us a whole lot of flexibility and kind of opened our eyes to new horizons. One of which is that, we knew we were a global organization. In October of last year, we hosted 60 folks from around the world here in Philadelphia. But since we all were very focused on our individual ecosystems, we hadn't yet necessarily figured out the power of really leveraging the global network. And so for me, that's been one of kind of the icing on the cake in all of this, is that we've really been able to collaborate with our peers. One event, we hosted people from 10 different states in the United States and 5 different countries. And that was incredibly exciting to think over the course of 5 hours that we saw people from Cairo, and we saw people from, Australia, and folks from, Rotterdam, but then also folks from Israel, and, folks from, I think there was 2 people from California, or 7 people from California and 2 people from Hawaii, that were actually attending a Venture Cafe Philadelphia event because of the speakers that were being showcased. So it's pretty cool to be able to collaborate with our peers, but then also really to be able to showcase the amazing talent that we have in Philadelphia.
Well, I was going to say, we're constantly as a greater community talking about, how do we amplify Philadelphia and how do we put it in this national and international spotlight? And it sounds like this is just another fantastic new way to do that. So what do you think the future is of Venture Cafe and this virtual opportunity?
Well, certainly the global aspect of it, I think, is something that we won't lose sight of when we have the opportunity to come back together in person. We are collaborating broadly. A great example of what that looks like is we had an investor panel. And so we had already planned on having an investor panel focused on life sciences in Philadelphia. And we said, hey, how do we make this better for the community? And how do we get investors from both Miami and Providence joined the panel? So not only did we have investors from kind of angel investors all the way through to Series B, but we also had investors from different markets. So it was really amazing for the entire group that was able to join to be able to listen to different people's perspectives and understand what might be different in a Philadelphia ecosystem versus Miami's ecosystem. And so as we think about going forward, I think we definitely need to be very focused on how those global opportunities can be leveraged and showcased. But then one of the other amazing things that we've been able to see, and I think even do even faster, is actually pivot pretty quickly. So for instance, last Wednesday, the UCD ended up announcing an emergency relief fund that was for retail and restaurant workers. And literally less than 24 hours later, we were able to host a session for them to be able to explain it broadly to the public, as well as have Q&A to really help folks be able to apply for that terrific relief. And so it's been interesting to think about how we've expanded our reach, but we're also even more nimble than we ever were before.
Absolutely. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because Matt and Sarah of University City District were on our show recently, and they talked about what a fantastic opportunity, it was to share that information so quickly. So I think that's great. And especially, I loved what you said about the investors panel and how we could learn about different markets and how different cities and counties do things differently. I think that's so important. I mean, Philadelphia loves Philadelphia, and that's what makes it so great here. But it's a good reminder and an excellent new way to look outside of ourselves and just, provide more resources and better insight. So it sounds like this is going to still fulfill the long-term goals of Venture Cafe, if not only expand them now that you have this new opportunity. So I think that's great. Was the tech was the tech difficult to learn for your team to get everything set up and running, just from a logistical standpoint?
So I think we definitely took the approach of walking before we ran. So that first week, we did things like pull some of our demo tables out of the cafe. And so we actually went to those speakers and we said, you know what, we're making this pivot. We're not sure how a demo table is going to work in this environment, but then we gradually added back in different features that we were able to integrate. So, one of the things that we did, a couple weeks into it was host a session for Councilmember Gautier, and she hosted her first ever virtual town hall. And then we were really able to be very sophisticated from a technological standpoint to be able to break people out into individual sessions, bring them back together. We didn't do that the first week. The first week we were definitely like, hey, how do we make sure that we have an event that we're going to be proud of, but yet that we're going to continue to experiment each week and be bolder each week?
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's a great lesson for anyone that's at home watching this. That's, I know me personally, I'm very overwhelmed by the tech aspect of this work from home and these virtual meetings, but to just do something, do it simple and do that well, and then gradually add on the features, I think makes a lot of sense. So it reassures me that, big institutions like the Science Center are also taking that approach. And I think it's really smart. So how can people get involved with Venture Cafe and support its mission?
Well, I think that, at the end of the day, Venture Cafe is all about partnerships. So over the course of the last year, we've partnered with 100 different partners. The Economy League has, partnered with you all several times. We've partnered with the city of Philadelphia many times. We've partnered with Black Gold Ventures, was the organization where we had 400 people that we were partnering with before we went into the virtual environment. So thinking about us as a resource for partnerships is something that that's how we're going to grow Philadelphia. That we're going to come out of this bigger, bolder, and braver, which was kind of our theme for 2020, by virtue of joining together. So one, if you're interested in partnering with us, let us know. You can email at hello@venturecafephiladelphia.org. That's a great way to let us know that you want to partner. So do you want to present a session? Do you want to collaborate in creating a night full of different opportunities? We're game for that. Secondly, I think what's really important is for people to attend. So keep supporting these virtual formats in the virtual environment. What I always say is, give us feedback. So if you come to a Venture Cafe and don't leave inspired, we need to know. It is my absolute commitment and my team's absolute commitment to really think about how every time we're engaging with our stakeholders, that they're learning and growing and have an opportunity to connect with other people. So I would say that, and then obviously in this crazy time, if you're able to financially support nonprofit organizations or relief funds as it is, just thinking about how we can all collectively help make sure that our workforce is protected and is going to kind of come out of this not only better educated and smarter because they've attended Venture Cafe sessions, but they're going to come out of this financially stable.
That's great. And it's such an important way to, pass that on, and because when everyone is served, then Philadelphia is served. And I think that's a great way to help. So what is your advice, just closing thoughts, what's your advice for viewers at home that are contemplating their own pivot right now?
I think there's no time like the present, in that, everything's changing. And I think that what that does is it affords people an opportunity to be innovative and think creatively, because they're somewhat forced to, but it gives you that flexibility and the time. our days are different. So, this morning I was reading an article on work blocks. So who says that we have to work 8 to 5? We're learning that, we need to help educate our kids for a couple hours a day. That's okay. We need to be empathetic to what everyone's facing and recognize that now's an opportunity for us to think creatively and think differently. And no idea is a bad idea. I would say kind of give yourself room and compassion to learn and grow. But I would also say be true to yourself. So this week, my Venture Cafe newsletter was about how roots keep you grounded. And so, don't go doing something where maybe you don't necessarily have the kind of the right mindset to do that, but use your roots to do it, but no time like the present.
That's great. I think that's incredibly timely and well put. That's perfect. And when is the next Venture Cafe? Can you just let everybody know?
Sure. We have Venture Cafes every Thursday from 3 to 8 p.m. So the next one will be, today's Wednesday, so the next one will be tomorrow. We have an incredible lineup, several folks, one actually woman who is a doctor who's speaking about COVID-19 and kind of the mental effects on you. It's actually a precursor to an event that we're doing that we were already planning on doing on May 7th on what's it like to be an entrepreneur and what's kind of the mental state you need to be in. So actually very timely as we're talking about this. But then we also have some of my colleagues from the Science Center who are doing some project-based learning work for parents who are home and, being forced to not only be mom or dad, but also be educator. And so how can they do that in a way that's fun and rewarding for both the children and the parents, in addition to many, many other topics as well. I would also say one of the other things, if for some reason Thursdays don't work for you from 3 to 8, we also host Quorum, which is our drop-in lounge and our community space where we do events, which we're not really doing right now. We are also hosting lunchtime sessions. And so they're little lunchtime lessons. They're usually about 30 minutes. They can range from an amazing resume writing workshop that we did to a sketching session. So helping people feel inspired and creative throughout the course of their day.
Thank you so much, Tracy. This is fantastic information, and it's so great to hear how you guys are pivoting. I'm going to share your contact information. Again, this is Tracy Brala of the University City Science Center. You can find more information at sciencecenter.org. You can also find them on Twitter and Facebook. Tracy, thank you so much. We really appreciate you having you on the show. Again, I'm Jen DeVore, your host, Civic Impact Manager at the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. Thank you for watching The Pivot. You can find us online at economyleague.org and on Twitter as well. And if you have a pivot of your own that you're interested in sharing, please let us know. You can reach us at pivot@economyleague.org. Thank you so much. We appreciate you watching.